Imagine being utterly dismissed by your own sister, relegated to the background, and then brazenly thrown out of Thanksgiving dinner, all because your profession wasn't elite enough for her newly acquired lawyer friends. Now imagine her face when her high-powered boss, the very man she was trying to impress, reveals your true, undeniable success to the entire table. That's not just a bad holiday, it's a reckoning. My name is Fiona Anderson, and I'm 34 years old. If someone had told me that my sister would one day banish me from our family's Thanksgiving celebration, all for the sake of appearances among her lawyer colleagues, I would have found it utterly absurd. Yet that precise scenario unfolded last November. The repercussions of that night didn't merely fracture our familial bond, they dramatically reshaped both of our lives forever. My younger sister, Brianna Anderson, was so consumed with cultivating her public image that she made a desperate attempt to conceal the very individual who had silently anchored her entire future. She remained blissfully unaware that the embarrassing sibling she intended to relegate to the kitchen was not just an environmental systems expert, but in fact, the chief executive of the very enterprise her prestigious law firm relied upon. Before I dive into the disastrous events of that Thanksgiving, if you find these kinds of narratives compelling, the kind that are raw, truthful, and carry a hint of cinematic drama, then please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Do so only if it genuinely resonates with you. And I'm curious, from what part of the world are you tuning in, and what time is it there right now? Please share in the comments. I genuinely enjoy reading them. Now, allow me to transport you back to that pivotal Thanksgiving weekend, the time when everything irrevocably altered. The real prelude began 3 days before the holiday. Brianna's call interrupted me as I meticulously reviewed a stack of pending service agreements in my office. She probably pictured me beneath a dusty crawl space, perhaps hunched over a sputtering boiler, grime on my hands. Instead, I was seated in a sleek, glass-enclosed conference room, sifting through detailed proposals for 5 substantial new commercial properties. "Fiona, regarding Thursday," she began, her voice already possessing that familiar, brittle tension, a nervous edge she often adopted. "We absolutely need to discuss the dinner plans." I leaned back slightly in my executive chair. "What exactly about the dinner?" I inquired, my tone even. "Well, some colleagues from the firm will be attending. Very influential individuals, including a couple of the partners. This is a crucial networking opportunity for me." She hesitated, and I could practically hear her carefully selecting each word, holding back others. "So, about the attire?" I interrupted, a touch too flatly. "Brianna, I'm perfectly capable of choosing appropriate clothing for Thanksgiving dinner." Of course, that's not it at all. It's simply when they inquire about what you do." A prolonged silence stretched between us for a beat. "What about my profession?" I pressed, even though a cold dread was already forming, anticipating precisely where she was steering this conversation. "Perhaps just say you're an environmental systems consultant. It sounds far more refined, you know? Something about climate control strategy for large buildings, that sort of thing." My stomach began to tighten. "You mean, instead of simply stating I'm an environmental systems specialist and the head of an HVAC company, it's not technically a lie?" She blurted out, rushing her words. "You certainly do consult on climate systems for various structures. It's just, these individuals are from Whitman and Lowell, LLP. They handle multi-billion-dollar transactions and significant commercial property agreements. I need this evening to be absolutely flawless. Alexander Whitman, the managing partner himself, might even make an appearance. This is monumentally important for my career, Fiona." Back then, his name held no particular significance for me. Little did I know, it would very soon. "Fine," I sighed, exhaling slowly. I was too utterly drained to engage in a futile argument. "Environmental systems consulting. Whatever helps you sleep at night." "Thank you, and Fiona?" She paused again, that calculated hesitation. "Perhaps consider wearing that dark green dress you chose for Cousin Felicia's wedding. It always seemed quite appropriate." As she abruptly disconnected the call, I stared intently at the stack of contracts laid out before me on the polished table. 5 significant new commercial buildings, each requiring comprehensive climate engineering and ongoing maintenance. Anderson Mechanical Systems, my once modest repair shop, had just secured another multi-million-dollar quarter. Yet, in Brianna's eyes, I remained merely the sister who worked with her hands, the one who had chosen a practical technical education over the supposed prestige of law school. The sibling she seemed at a loss to place whenever individuals with impressive titles and embossed business cards populated a room. I truly should have seen the impending disaster unfolding before me. Thanksgiving Day itself arrived. I pulled into her meticulously paved driveway in Maple Ridge, New York, precisely at noon. This was 2 hours ahead of the main gathering, just as she had requested, so I could contribute to the final preparations. Her residence was one of those immaculately staged colonial-style homes, pristine white siding, elegant dark shutters, and perfectly manicured shrubs bordering the front walk. It practically screamed, young, successful attorney with an impeccably organized life. However, once inside, it always felt less like a genuine home and more like a carefully constructed stage set. "You're wearing jeans," she stated, bypassing any typical greeting. I held up the garment bag containing my chosen dress. "I brought my change of clothes. I'm here to help with the cooking. I'll switch outfits later." She darted a quick glance toward the front door, as if anticipating a sudden arrival who might witness me in my casual attire. "Right. Well, some guests might arrive earlier than expected. Perhaps you should change immediately." I retreated to the guest bathroom to change, listening to her frantic activity throughout the house. I heard the rhythmic opening and closing of cabinet doors, the harsh scrape of chairs being repositioned, the delicate clink of silverware. At one point, I discreetly peered into the living room and watched her carefully unmount a framed photograph of us at my trade certification ceremony from the mantelpiece, sliding it furtively into a drawer. By 2 o'clock, the initial wave of attorneys from Whitman and Lowell began to appear. Brianna's entire demeanor transformed instantaneously. Her laughter ascended to a higher, more affected pitch. She spoke exclusively in references to legal precedents and complex deal terms, completely abandoning any trace of shared memories or family anecdotes. "This is my sister, Fiona," she repeated with almost mechanical frequency. "She's involved in the technical sector." Technical sector? It was a vague, almost condescending phrase, as if I spent my days coding obscure apps rather than meticulously designing intricate chiller systems and advanced air handlers. Then he entered. Alexander Whitman. He was older, radiating an innate composure, possessing that subtle, understated authority that meant he never needed to consciously fill a silence. His gaze swept around the room, eventually settling on me, accompanied by a faint frown of recognition that he couldn't quite pinpoint. "Fiona Anderson," he vocalized slowly after Brianna's introduction, testing the name. "That name does sound rather familiar." "Oh, Fiona is a remarkably common name," Brianna interjected, her words coming too swiftly, accompanied by a bright, utterly artificial laugh. "May I fetch you a beverage, Mr. Whitman?" But his attention remained fixed on me, his eyebrows slightly furrowed in thought. "Anderson, Anderson Mechanical Systems." The color visibly drained from Brianna's face, leaving her stark white. "Just a mere coincidence," she stammered, her voice unnaturally fast. "My sister, she handles field work, small tasks, residential repairs." I started to open my mouth to politely correct her, but she shot me a look so sharp, it felt as though it could instantly freeze steam. Something monumental was about to shatter. I could feel it manifesting in my chest, akin to the intense atmospheric pressure shift that precedes a violent storm. The true descent into humiliation began during the cocktail hour. Brianna had strategically placed me at the furthest extremity of the living room, close enough to maintain a semblance of visibility, yet sufficiently distant to be comfortably outside the main legal circle. I was idly swirling a glass of sparkling water when one of the younger attorneys, a man named Grant Melville, ambled over, martini in hand. "So, the technical sector?" he inquired, his tone genuinely kind. "What particular kind of tech?" I drew a steadying breath, attempting to articulate Brianna's preferred, diluted version of the truth. "Environmental systems. I work with climate control systems." Brianna materialized at his elbow with the suddenness of a hawk swooping from the sky. "Heating and cooling, essentially." "Oh, like an engineer?" he asked, a hint of genuine interest in his voice. "More akin to a repair person," she lightly corrected, her tone overly sweet. She primarily fixes air conditioners and such. There it was, that subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his expression. I had witnessed it countless times before. That polite, yet distinctly distant smile people typically reserve for service staff, like a caterer or the valet parking their car. Well, he offered, clearly trying to be agreeable, someone certainly has to ensure we don't roast or freeze, right? Precisely, Brianna agreed, her voice saccharine, almost painfully bright. Blue-collar work is just so incredibly essential. The way she emphasized essential made my skin prickle with heat, as if she were bestowing a backhanded compliment upon a well-trained domestic animal. Actually, I began, attempting to interject. Fiona just loves to refer to her repair jobs as a company, Brianna cut in smoothly, sharing a conspiratorial smile with Grant. It's quite sweet, really. She's terribly ambitious. He chuckled politely, a perfunctory sound, and then excused himself, already pivoting back toward the more significant networking cluster at the opposite end of the room. As he walked away, I observed him lean in toward another associate, whisper something, glance back at me, and then a slight smirk played on his lips. Brianna remained, her manufactured smile vanishing the instant we were alone. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" She hissed, her voice barely audible. "Telling the truth," I stated calmly. "The truth is completely irrelevant right now. Optics are everything. These people simply don't comprehend where we originate from." "You mean, where you originate from?" I clarified, choosing my words with deliberate care. "I'm not at all ashamed of." "Well, perhaps you absolutely should be." Her words slipped out, raw and unbidden, as if they had been waiting, coiled just behind her teeth. We both froze, the air thick with unspoken meaning. "I didn't mean that," she quickly stammered, but the damage was done. We both knew the undeniable truth. From the shadowy doorway leading into the kitchen, Aunt Miriam Blake observed us, her gaze quiet but piercingly sharp, a look I'd known intimately since childhood. Brianna seized my arm, her grip tight. "Come with me, right now." She practically dragged me into the kitchen, quickly checking to ensure no one had followed us into the private space. "I've invested too much effort to reach this point in my career," she whispered fiercely. "Do you truly grasp the immense significance of this dinner? The managing partner is here. This is my golden opportunity for the partner track. I cannot, under any circumstances, have it derailed simply because you insist on discussing HVAC ducts and refrigerant levels in front of individuals who routinely negotiate complex international mergers. Brianna, I meticulously design climate systems for enormous commercial buildings," I stated evenly, my voice unwavering. "It's hardly a casual side gig." She shook her head in exasperation. "Please just stay in here and assist with the food. I'll inform everyone you're not feeling well." "You want me to literally hide in the kitchen on Thanksgiving?" I asked, disbelief coloring my tone. "I want you to be realistic. You do not belong in that room, Fiona. You recognize it, I recognize it, and they most certainly recognize it." Each of her sentences landed like a physical shove to my chest, pushing the air from my lungs. What stung even more profoundly was the faint, half-relieved expression on her face when she mistakenly believed I might actually comply. "I am not ashamed of what I do," I reiterated quietly. "Well, I am." Her hand immediately flew to her mouth, but it was already too late. The words had escaped. "I mean, I just want everything to be utterly perfect," she weakly backpedaled. Behind us, Aunt Miriam's voice cut through the burgeoning tension. "Brianna, your guests are inquiring about you." Brianna offered me a strange, fleeting smile, then swiftly exited, returning to her elaborate performance. Miriam remained, her eyes studying me intently. "How much longer do you intend to allow her to treat you this way?" she asked softly. "It's merely one dinner," I replied, trying to downplay it. "It's been years of dinners, Fiona," she countered gently. "Your father, Henry, would be absolutely heartbroken." She wasn't wrong. My chest constricted painfully at the mere thought of our dad, Henry Anderson. He would have been far beyond heartbroken by what I was about to do. But perhaps it was finally time for things to change. Standing there in Brianna's meticulously spotless kitchen, my mind drifted back to a solemn promise I had made 7 years prior. Dad lay in a sterile hospital bed, the air heavy with the sharp, metallic scent of antiseptic. The insidious cancer had spread throughout his body by then. Brianna, at that time, was immersed in her initial year at Ridgeview School of Law, suffocating under the crushing weight of student loans and seemingly impossible academic demands. "Please take care of your sister," he had whispered, his hand clammy and weak in mine, a fragile grip. "She possesses a brilliant mind, but she's also fragile. She requires someone strong, someone like you, to look out for her." "I will, Dad," I had pledged, my voice thick with emotion. "I promise." He passed away, leaving behind nothing but a mountain of debts and that sacred promise. Brianna never knew that the very night after his funeral, I sold my car, emptied the meager retirement savings I had painstakingly accumulated, and sat down with Aunt Miriam's banker friend to establish the Anderson Family Advancement Trust, discreetly in Brianna's name. She genuinely believed it was some long-forgotten investment from our father, a financial miracle that had simply blessed her path. For 7 years, precisely $4,200 departed my personal account each and every month. This covered her tuition fees, her textbooks, her bar examination preparation courses, the deposit for her apartment when she faced imminent eviction, and even her car payments when she fell behind. I embraced every hazardous industrial job I could find. Chemical plants, dilapidated old buildings laden with asbestos, laboratories requiring immense cooling loads. I meticulously expanded Anderson Mechanical Systems from a small, local crew into a comprehensive, full-scale climate engineering company, often working grueling 18-hour days. All of this so she could stand confidently in rooms like the one she occupied that day, feeling an unquestionable sense of belonging. "And she truly has no idea," Miriam murmured, stepping to stand beside me at the window, her voice hushed. I blinked, turning to her. You knew. I helped facilitate the trust's establishment, remember?" She reminded me gently. "My banker friend drafted half of the intricate paperwork. She genuinely doesn't comprehend that her purportedly successful sister is the sole reason she isn't utterly crushed beneath 6 figures of student debt." "It doesn't matter," I replied, trying to sound dismissive. "It absolutely does, Fiona," Miriam countered quietly. "Henry asked you to protect her, not to allow her to trample over you. Those two things are not synonymous." From the adjacent dining room, I heard Brianna's light, practiced laugh. A deeper male voice, which I now recognized as Whitman's, uttered something about vast property holdings and complex commercial real estate. "Sometimes," Miriam observed, her tone reflective, "the kindest action you can take for someone is to finally allow the natural consequences of their behavior to reach them." If only I had fully grasped the profound accuracy of her statement then. Wow. Can you truly believe Brianna's utterly appalling behavior? I know many of you listening have undoubtedly experienced some version of this scenario, being unfairly judged or condescendingly dismissed because your work is perceived as too manual or simply not impressive enough on paper. If this narrative strikes a chord with you, please consider tapping that like button. It genuinely helps other people discover these kinds of stories. And please, tell me in the comments, have you ever been made to feel inferior because of your job? Now, allow me to describe how everything spectacularly unraveled during dinner. Dinner was served punctually at 4 o'clock. Brianna, ever the orchestrator, had meticulously choreographed the seating arrangements. She positioned herself squarely in the middle of the table, perfectly visible to everyone, where she could effortlessly dictate the flow and subject matter of the conversation. I, on the other hand, was relegated to the furthest end, strategically placed near the kitchen door. "Just in case we require anything," she had said, a tight, saccharine smile pasted on her lips. The discussions at the table swirled around intricate mergers, aggressive case strategies, and cunning regulatory loopholes. Someone brought up a recent, high-profile deal involving Bayshore Property Group and a massive, mixed-use development project. My ears instinctively perked up. That particular property had, coincidentally, crossed my desk not very long ago. I ate quietly, responding only when directly addressed. Then, in the brief lull between the main course and dessert, Alexander Whitman deliberately set down his wine glass and turned his attention directly towards me. "Ms. Anderson," he began, his voice cutting through the lingering hum of conversation with polite, yet undeniable authority. "Fiona, I've been trying diligently to recall why your name sounded so familiar to me." He tapped his fingers lightly, thoughtfully, on the table's surface. Anderson Mechanical Systems, that's your company, isn't it? The entire table went utterly silent. Brianna's fork slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering loudly against her porcelain plate. That's not, she started, her voice a strangled gasp. Fiona works for a small— No, he gently interrupted, his eyes still firmly fixed on me, a new intensity in their depth. Anderson Mechanical Systems submitted a highly competitive bid on the Bayshore Tower redevelopment last month. We, in fact, represent Bayshore. I distinctly recognized the name from the contract documents. Every single gaze at the table, now charged with raw curiosity, followed his to me. I swallowed hard, lifted my eyes, and simply unequivocally answered, "Yes, that is my company." "Your company?" Grant blurted out from halfway down the table, looking genuinely bewildered. "I thought you primarily handled repair work." "I do," I affirmed. "I also meticulously design, expertly install, and diligently maintain commercial climate systems. We currently employ approximately 200 individuals." "Stop!" Brianna shot up from her seat so abruptly that her chair scraped harshly against the polished floor, the sound jarring. The color in her cheeks was a furious, panicked shade of crimson. "Just stop, Fiona. You're making an absolute fool of yourself." Even the dignified old grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to pause, holding its breath. "Making a fool of myself?" I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes." Her voice was now sharp, brittle, edged with desperation. "Pretending your tiny repair shop is some kind of grand corporation. These people actually understand what real businesses look like." Whitman's eyebrows arched in mild surprise. "Brianna, your sister's firm reported an approximate revenue of $52 million last year. They are, in fact, the largest independent commercial climate engineering company in the entire state." The profound silence that followed was almost physically palpable, pressing down on everyone present. Brianna's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her mind frantically searching for a reality where such a statement could not possibly be true. "That's not possible," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why not?" I inquired, consciously allowing 7 long years of swallowed hurt and resentment to finally leak into my tone. "Because I work with my hands, because I didn't attend law school, because I'm merely—" She cut me off, though she didn't finish her own sentence. "You're just—" But everyone at the table could effortlessly fill in the unspoken blank. Just a blue-collar nobody. Just the sister she adamantly wished no one would ever see. Whitman cleared his throat, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps we should," but Brianna had completely bypassed the point of caution. Her initial embarrassment had curdled into something far harsher, something dangerous, and she was on the verge of tearing down every carefully constructed safety net she possessed. Her meticulously fabricated image was unraveling, thread by thread, before everyone's eyes. "You're lying," she accused, her voice cold and sharp as splintered glass. "I don't know what kind of pathetic game you're attempting to play, but—" "Brianna," Aunt Miriam warned gently from the other end of the table. "No," she defied, lifting her chin, her eyes glistening with unshed tears and rage. "She's deliberately attempting to humiliate me, fabricating absurd stories about some immense company." "It isn't a story, Brianna," Whitman interjected calmly. "We've been attempting to schedule a meeting with Ms. Anderson for several months. Anderson Mechanical Systems holds our exclusive maintenance contract. Our facilities director consistently refers to them as the absolute best in the business." The other attorneys began to murmur amongst themselves, a low, confused hum. One of them had already discreetly pulled out his phone and was clearly searching for my company online. "This is utterly ridiculous," Brianna declared, her voice rising in pitch. "Fiona, you need to leave." I blinked slowly. "Excuse me? You heard me. Get out. This is a professional gathering, not some blue-collar hangout." Someone at the table actually gasped. I believe it was Lauren, Grant's wife. "Brianna," Whitman's voice held a distinct note of warning, but she barreled on, seemingly oblivious to his admonition. "Some people simply do not fit into certain rooms," she stated coolly, her gaze unwavering. "It's not personal, it's simply reality. You do not belong here, Fiona, you never have." "Is that because I'm an environmental systems specialist?" I asked softly, almost conversationally. "It's because you're an embarrassment," she snapped, the words finally out, loud and clear. You have absolutely no concept of how hard I have struggled to distance myself from all of this. She continued, making a vague, dismissive gesture encompassing our shared past. From the memory of our father from me, from our collective history. From being the daughter of a man who died broke. From having a sister who deliberately chose technical school over a proper college education, and now you want to appear here, in front of the people who truly matter, and pretend you're something you demonstrably are not. I pushed my chair back from the table, the legs scraping, and stood up straight. You're absolutely right, I conceded. I do not belong here. Finally, she muttered under her breath, a faint hint of triumph in her tone. Some common sense. I don't belong anywhere near someone who is so deeply ashamed of their own family, I added, my voice cutting through the strained silence. Of where they came from. I calmly retrieved my phone from my purse and swiftly typed a message. Texting your ride? She sneered, a dismissive curl to her lip. Oh, wait, you drove yourself, didn't you? You don't even know, I stated, my thumb pressing send with a deliberate motion. I'm merely setting something in motion that has been overdue for years. Across the table, Miriam offered me the slightest, knowing nod. She understood precisely what I had just done. 7 years, I said, my gaze fixed on Brianna. 7 years is quite enough. She rolled her eyes, completely missing the gravity of my words. What in the world is that supposed to even mean? You'll find out soon enough. I reached into my bag and produced a thick manila envelope, its surface bearing the crisp, clean logo of Anderson Mechanical Systems at the very top. She let out a shaky, mocking laugh. What's that? An invoice? Are you actually going to charge me for Thanksgiving dinner? I offered no response. Instead, I carefully placed the envelope on the table directly in front of her. Whitman's gaze flickered to the prominent logo, and then to the neat stack of official-looking pages nestled inside. This is absolutely ridiculous, Brianna declared, though her voice had noticeably lost its prior certainty. Whatever game you're attempting to play, it's not a game, I asserted, my gaze sweeping across the multitude of faces intently watching us. I simply want everyone here to vividly remember this precise moment. When an individual reveals their true nature to you, it is imperative that you believe them. Oh, spare us the theatrics, she snapped, clearly agitated. Just leave. Gladly, I affirmed, reaching for my coat. But before I depart, Mr. Whitman, you should be aware that the message I just transmitted was directed to my chief financial officer. First thing Monday morning, we will be meticulously reviewing all of our commercial contracts for any potential conflicts of interest. His eyes sharpened instantly. He understood even if Brianna did not yet. Conflicts of interest? She echoed, confusion clouding her features. You fix air systems, Fiona. Stop pretending. Everything possesses a cost, I stated quietly. Even family loyalty. Miriam slowly rose from her seat. I believe I'll be departing as well, she announced. Brianna, you might find it beneficial to open that envelope after Fiona goes. Brianna scoffed. I'm not allowing her to create any further spectacle. If only she truly knew. The spectacle had barely even begun. I paused at the dining room threshold, then reached back into my bag and produced a smaller, cream-colored envelope, heavy with quality paper, subtly embossed with Estate of Henry Anderson. Actually, Brianna, I stated, my voice holding a new edge, there is one more thing. I set it carefully beside the first envelope. Dad did, in fact, leave you something after all. Her eyes flickered to it, despite her best efforts to ignore it. Dad had absolutely nothing to leave, she retorted, a bitter edge to her voice. This cannot be real. It is very much real, Miriam affirmed calmly. I personally helped establish it. I notarized it myself. Whitman rose halfway from his seat, unable to resist stepping closer, compelled by the unfolding drama. Brianna, what is it? He asked, his voice firm. But Brianna was beyond the capacity to respond. What she clutched in her hands was the unvarnished truth. The truth that everything upon which she had meticulously constructed her identity, the prestigious education, the burgeoning career, rested precariously on a foundation she had not, in fact, laid herself. This is fake, she finally managed to articulate, her voice strained and thin. Some pathetic attempt to intentionally make me look bad. Every single payment to Ridgeview School of Law, I enumerated. Every bar examination fee. Every mysterious student loan that inexplicably vanished. every apartment deposit that arrived just when you were about to be evicted. That was all me, Brianna, for 7 long years. You're fabricating this, she whispered, denial warring with dawning horror. You couldn't possibly afford that, because I'm merely a blue-collar nobody, I asked, echoing her earlier sentiment. Because I labor with my hands, so clearly I couldn't possibly support you. Nothing, she insisted, her voice tight. You're absolutely right, I conceded. An ordinary technician couldn't have achieved that, but the owner of the largest commercial climate engineering firm in the state, boasting $52 million in annual revenue, she most certainly could. The room erupted in a cacophony of low murmurs. Brianna's carefully curated persona was disintegrating in real time, before everyone's astonished eyes. Allow me to enlighten you about what you don't comprehend regarding your embarrassing sister, I declared, my voice steady and unwavering. While you resided comfortably in your ivory tower, I was often crawling through grime-filled mechanical rooms at 2 o'clock in the morning. I willingly undertook every dangerous, undesirable job that no one else dared to touch: chemical plants, crumbling aging factories, laboratories grappling with failing chillers. I painstakingly constructed an entire company from the ground up, starting with nothing more than a battered truck and a basic toolbox. Why? Because I made a sacred vow to Dad that I would always take care of you. Stop it, she hissed, her voice sharp with desperation. Every single month for 7 consecutive years, $4,200 departed my account, I continued, unwavering. Your tuition, your rent, that bar exam prep course you conveniently believed you won in a drawing, I personally paid for it. The car payment that mysteriously got covered precisely when you were on the brink of default, that was me again. You're inventing this entire story to ruin me, she accused, her voice trembling now. The only person who humiliated you this evening, I stated unequivocally, is yourself. I then turned to her colleagues, addressing them directly. She spent 7 years living in profound shame of her origins, ashamed of our father, who literally worked himself into an early grave attempting to provide us with a better opportunity. Ashamed of me because I consciously chose trade school over a traditional degree. She aspired to ascend, but she never once desired to acknowledge the very foundation she climbed upon. Not everyone possesses an intellectual capacity for working with their mind, Brianna snapped, audaciously repeating the exact condescending line she had previously used on me in private. Some individuals are simply destined for manual labor. Whitman visibly flinched at her words. You're absolutely correct, I affirmed. Some individuals are indeed meant to roll up their sleeves and apply themselves diligently. Some are meant to cultivate gratitude. Some are meant to forever remember their roots. You, Brianna, are none of those things. Get out, she screamed suddenly, her composure finally shattering completely. Get out of my house. I will, I replied calmly. But first, I indicated the manila envelope with a slight nod. You might want to quickly flip to the page explicitly labeled Service Agreement Termination Notice. The words descended upon the table with the chilling precision of a blade. Brianna tore open the envelope, sending papers scattering across the table. One document slid directly in front of Whitman. He picked it up, rapidly scanned its contents, and his expression transformed from mere curiosity to immediate, stark alarm. Brianna, he enunciated slowly, his voice gravely serious. Do you comprehend the significance of this? She was frantically scanning another page, her lips silently mouthing the words. Anderson Mechanical Systems, Exclusive Climate Systems Maintenance Contract, Whitman and Lowell, LLP. Her voice thinned to a mere whisper. This can't be. Your sister's company, Whitman explained carefully, his gaze still fixed on the document, has responsibly managed every climate system in our building for the past 3 years. It represents a substantial $6.5 million annual contract. The cluster of attorneys around the table began to pass the documents among themselves, reading, whispering in hushed tones. Page 3, I instructed calmly. The termination clause. Her eyes immediately darted to it. 30 days notice, she read aloud, her voice trembling. Conflict of interest clause. What conflict of interest? The one where my sister publicly humiliates me in front of my largest clients, I stated calmly, matter-of-factly. I'd say that definitively counts. You can't do this, she choked out, her voice filled with desperate disbelief. You wouldn't dare? I can, I affirmed. And I am. As of Monday morning, Whitman and Lowell has precisely 30 days to secure a new climate systems contractor. Whitman's face had gone a distinct shade paler. Ms. Anderson, surely we can discuss this rationally. There's nothing left to discuss, I replied, unwavering. Brianna made it abundantly clear that I don't belong in her world. I'm simply honoring that sentiment. This is blackmail. She shouted, her voice laced with fury. This is business, I retorted coolly. Something you, as such a successful attorney, should undoubtedly comprehend. Miriam stood once more. Brianna, she added, her voice carrying an unexpected weight. You should also be aware that, without Fiona's continued support, you still owe Ridgeview approximately $62,000 for your final academic year. The trust was only funded through last semester. That final payment was scheduled to originate from Fiona next month. Somehow, I don't anticipate it will. You can't do this, Brianna whispered, her bravado completely evaporated. My career, my reputation, I'll lose everything. You meticulously built your career on my money, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, and your reputation on meticulously never mentioning it. I picked up my bag. You desired the world to believe I didn't exist. Congratulations. For you, I no longer do. Ms. Anderson, Whitman called out, rising from his seat as I turned toward the hallway. Fiona, please, let's engage in a rational discussion. But I had already turned my back, leaving Brianna seated there, clutching the shattered fragments of the world she had so blithely taken for granted. I still find myself getting choked up recalling that precise moment. Betrayal originating from a stranger inflicts a certain type of pain. However, betrayal from your own flesh and blood cuts in an entirely different, far deeper way. If you have ever been compelled to stand up to a family member who continuously took and took, yet never afforded you an iota of respect, please share your experience in the comments below. And if this narrative has, in any way, offered you a measure of strength or clarity, please consider hitting the subscribe button. You'll definitely want to hear what unfolds next, because the truth didn't merely emerge that night. Its echoes resonated long afterward in ways none of us could have possibly foreseen. The room erupted in a cacophony of sound the very second I stepped into the foyer. Raised voices, chairs scraping violently, silverware clinking as people abruptly rose from their places. Layers of whispered apologies, frantic blame, and sheer, palpable shock filled the air. Miss Anderson, Fiona, please wait. I turned. Whitman stood framed in the doorway, illuminated by the warm light emanating from behind him, the sharp chill from the open front door seeping in around us. Your sister is currently struggling immensely to process all of this, he began diplomatically. However, I need to urgently clarify something. For 8 years now, I stated, my voice calm and clear, we meticulously maintain the climate systems at Bayshore Tower, Redwood Commerce Center, your very own headquarters, and approximately 60 other commercial properties. He shook his head, a faint, almost disbelieving smile playing on his lips. We have been actively trying to expand our service agreement with your company for months. Our operations infrastructure director consistently praises you as the sole vendor who never presents us with excuses. He paused, then added almost to himself, and yet, your sister is so profoundly ashamed of you. She is quite young, he added, as if attempting to offer a feeble excuse for her behavior, and apparently remarkably foolish. From the dining room, I could distinctly hear Brianna's voice escalating in volume. There has to be some law against this. She can't simply... There is, he murmured, almost as an aside to me. Contract law, and you are well within your legal rights. Then, more loudly, though clearly intended for me, however, I sincerely hope you'll reconsider. Not for Brianna's sake, but for the 40 other attorneys present tonight who had absolutely nothing to do with this unfortunate incident. You have 30 days, I stated, referring to the upcoming month of December, to locate another company willing to assume control of your systems on such urgent terms. He winced visibly. That will prove exceedingly difficult. About as challenging as enduring an entire dinner while my own sister casually dismisses my life as an embarrassment, I replied, my voice unwavering. He nodded slowly, a profound understanding in his eyes. I comprehend. Behind him, Brianna suddenly appeared in the hallway, mascara streaking down her tear-stained face, the eyes of her colleagues fixed on her like an audience that refused to offer applause when the performance finally concluded. "Fiona, please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. Can we talk? Now you wish to talk?" I countered, my voice laced with a bitter irony. "After you explicitly told me to leave, I didn't mean any of it," she cried. I was under such immense pressure. You can't possibly comprehend what it's like to have everything riding on a single night. "You mean the pressure of having your law school tuition quietly covered?" I inquired, my voice cold. "The pressure of never once seeing a single student loan bill. Was that the pressure you're referring to?" Her colleagues watched silently, their faces a mixture of pity and raw curiosity. "Everyone makes mistakes," Brianna pleaded, desperate. "I uttered things I didn't truly mean, I was simply stressed." "And you didn't merely commit a mistake tonight," I clarified. "You have spent years behaving as though you are superior to the very individuals who painstakingly constructed the ladder you climbed. Tonight was merely the first occasion you did so where anyone could actually bear witness." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're all I have left." "No, Brianna," I corrected her gently but firmly. "I was all you had left, and you willfully exchanged me for the transient approval of people who now know precisely who you truly are." I opened the door. The biting, cold November air immediately rushed in. "Happy Thanksgiving," I stated. "And good luck explaining all of this to Ridgeview when that final payment conspicuously fails to appear." I stepped outside, then paused and turned back to face the cluster of people still gathered in her foyer. "Do you truly desire the unvarnished truth?" I announced, raising my voice slightly so everyone could hear. "Allow me to tell you about Henry Anderson's daughters." "Fiona, do," Brianna begged, her voice filled with panic. Whitman held up a silencing hand. "Let her speak." "Our father was an environmental technician himself," I recounted. "He meticulously repaired things. Pipes, boilers, whatever happened to break down. He literally worked himself into the ground, often juggling 3 jobs simultaneously. When he passed away, Brianna was completely buried under a mountain of law school debt. She was on the verge of dropping out." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking application. So, I did what I felt was necessary. I sold my car. I completely drained my savings. I worked 18-hour days in sweltering boiler rooms and cramped mechanical spaces, taking on jobs that offered hazard pay because no one else was willing to do them. Every single month for 7 years, I transferred $4,200 into the Anderson Family Advancement Trust for law school, bar fees, apartment deposits, even her car payment when she missed it. I turned the screen so that whoever was closest could clearly see the long line of transfers. $360,000 in total, I declared. From me, to the trust, to Brianna's future. Brianna slowly slid down the wall and sat on the floor, her body racked with deep, broken sobs. "And how did she choose to repay me?" I asked the group gently, rhetorically. "By concealing me, by framing me as a pathetic joke, by removing our photo from her mantelpiece, because it simply didn't align with the fabricated story she so desperately wanted to tell." "Why?" Lauren asked softly, a genuine question. "Why would you undertake all of that for someone who treated you with such utter contempt?" "Because family is supposed to embody something meaningful," I replied. "Because promises genuinely matter. Because I genuinely believed that, one day, she would finally grasp that true success is not measured by a job title, but by the strength of one's character." Whitman cleared his throat, his expression now cold and stern. "Brianna," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "Is any of this true?" She could barely manage a nod, her head bowed low. "Then you haven't merely embarrassed yourself tonight," he continued, his words cutting. "You have, in fact, demonstrated a serious lack of integrity, a fundamental absence of basic gratitude. We deeply value character at Whitman and Lowell, and tonight, you have unequivocally shown us yours." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. What are you saying?" "Your performance review is scheduled for next month," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "Tonight's events will be a significant factor. The final, crushing blow to the career she had so meticulously attempted to protect originated from the very man she had been performing for." "The trust is officially terminated as of tonight," I announced. "The service agreement with your firm will irrevocably conclude in 30 days. And you and I, Brianna, we are finished. Do not call. Do not appear at my office. Do not send another email requesting assistance. I produced one final document. This is a cessation of support notice, I stated, holding it up, notarized, effective immediately. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she read it. You're truly cutting me off, she whispered, her voice laced with despair. I'm establishing necessary boundaries with someone who never genuinely valued what I wholeheartedly gave, I corrected her. You won't merely lose the extra money, Brianna. You will lose the apartment, the car, that Audi A7 you so dearly loved driving to the firm, because all of it relies entirely on payments from a trust you never once bothered to thank me for. Whitman quickly skimmed the notice, nodding slightly in approval. Legally sound, he murmured. Remarkably clear. Of course it's clear, I affirmed. I didn't build a multi-million-dollar company by being sloppy. Brianna slowly dragged herself to her feet. Please, Fiona, I'm so incredibly sorry. Truly, genuinely sorry. No, I said gently, yet firmly. You're merely sorry that there are consequences. That's an entirely different sentiment. I lifted the pen, signed the termination notice with a steady hand, and returned it to her. The trust that funded your education, I stated clearly, is terminated. The service deal that professionally connected us is terminated in 30 days. Our relationship, however, I held her gaze, unwavering, you ended that yourself tonight. You can't abandon me, she cried, a raw, desperate wail. I'm not abandoning you, I clarified. I'm finally allowing you to stand firmly on your own 2 feet without using my shoulders as a step, and then blatantly pretending I was never even there. One of the other attorneys whispered, This is absolutely brutal. This is justice, Miriam corrected quietly, her voice firm. Fiona supported her sister for years while Brianna consistently looked down on her. Actions unequivocally have consequences. Whitman sighed deeply. You should also be aware, he said to Brianna, his tone now one of a professional delivering grim news, that without Anderson Mechanical Systems, our building will likely have to shut down for at least a few days during the transition period. That represents millions in lost billable hours. The partners will not be pleased. Brianna's face went even paler, a deathly white. That's no longer my concern, I stated plainly. I'm certain you'll formulate an impressive legal argument to explain why insulting and humiliating the CEO of your most critical vendor was a sound strategic move. I stepped out into the frigid night, the cold air biting at my skin like a sudden reset. By the time I reached my car, a sleek Lucid Air Grand Touring that Brianna had never even noticed, I heard doors slamming shut behind me, engines starting, tires crunching over the gravel of the driveway. Her perfectly orchestrated Thanksgiving networking event was already dissolving into chaos. Fiona, wait. Whitman jogged up to me, his breath visible in the frosty air. Please, just give me another minute. I opened the driver's door but hesitated before getting inside. What is it? This situation is going to severely impact Brianna's career, he explained. She owes $62,000 to Ridgeview. Without your upcoming payment, she will require emergency loans. The firm will have to reevaluate her future here, considering both the disruption at the office and her conduct tonight. That's a matter between you and her, I replied, unwavering. You had a premonition I would be here, didn't you? He asked, a knowing look in his eyes. I had a strong hunch, I conceded. When she specifically mentioned your name, I cross-referenced it with the guest list she sent our mother. I've been diligently maintaining your systems for 3 years, Mr. Whitman. I know your calendar almost as intimately as your own assistant does. Brianna, unfortunately, never bothered to inquire about my clientele. She could lose everything she has worked for, he stated quietly, almost gravely. She should have considered that before she attempted to erase the very person who paid for it all, I retorted. He nodded slowly, a profound understanding dawning in his eyes. I comprehend. For what it's worth, I am truly sorry you had to bear such a heavy burden, and that it ultimately came to this. Henry would be immensely proud of what you have meticulously built, Fiona, and undoubtedly ashamed of how his other daughter chose to treat you. Thank you, I said softly, genuinely touched. He hesitated briefly. One more thing regarding the Bayshore Tower contract. We would very much like to discuss it directly with you. No intermediaries. I extended my business card to him, the one that unequivocally stated CEO, Anderson Mechanical Systems. "Call my office on Monday," I instructed. "We'll arrange it." As I drove away, I caught one final glimpse in my rearview mirror. Brianna stood motionless in the doorway under the harsh porch light, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching my taillights disappear into the distance. The driveway slowly emptied as her colleagues departed one by one. Her grand night of networking had irrevocably transformed into her professional wake. My phone buzzed just as I turned onto the main road. A text from my CFO. "Got your message. Drafting termination notice to Whitman and Lowell for Monday delivery." Another text arrived immediately after from Miriam. "Your father would be so proud. You honored your promise long enough. It's time to let go now." She was absolutely correct. 7 years of unwavering sacrifice, of being constantly minimized, of quietly underwriting someone who visibly flinched at the mere thought of being associated with me. It was finally, unequivocally over. But the true aftershocks were still to come. The week immediately following Thanksgiving was a veritable whirlwind of repercussions. On Monday morning, precisely at 9 o'clock, my CFO personally hand-delivered the service agreement termination notice to Whitman and Lowell's prominent downtown office. By noon, the firm's senior partners were in full-blown crisis mode, frantically attempting to locate a new vendor capable of assuming control of their critical climate systems in the dead of winter. The major competing firms in our industry were already fully committed or were quoting triple the standard rates for emergency transitions. Taking over a high-risk, entire climate system after another contractor abruptly withdraws is not merely a simple swap. It is a complex, high-stakes surgical procedure. On Tuesday, Brianna was summoned into a closed-door meeting. "Alexander told me all about it later," Miriam informed me. "They've reassigned her from corporate deals down to a cramped section reviewing compliance records in the basement. That's typically where the brand new attorneys begin their careers." "She was crying," Miriam continued. "She blamed you." "And what was his response?" I inquired. "He told her she destroyed her own life the moment she decided she was superior to the very people who had steadfastly supported her," Miriam replied, her voice firm. On Wednesday, the financial office at Ridgeview School of Law contacted Brianna regarding the outstanding $62,000 balance. Without the final trust payment, she was given a strict 48-hour deadline to secure emergency funding or face the grim reality of having her degree and academic transcript frozen indefinitely. By Thursday, the story had begun to quietly circulate throughout the city's tight-knit legal circles. Not with names at first, but merely as a cautionary tale. "The associate who humiliated her blue-collar sister at Thanksgiving," one version recounted, only to discover that sister was a millionaire CEO who had personally financed her entire law school education. By Friday, it was no longer a mere rumor. People knew precisely which associate it was. I received an email from Brianna that day, a rambling 20 paragraphs long. Apologies were hopelessly entangled with elaborate excuses and half-hearted explanations. "Please, can't we talk? Please don't do this. Please, I'll make everything right." I did not respond. The following Monday, Whitman and Lowell were forced to completely close their main office for 3 full days, while a different contractor attempted to stabilize their failing climate systems and swap out their equipment. Cases experienced significant delays. Clients lodged numerous complaints. Billable hours evaporated into thin air. Internally, everyone knew exactly which Thanksgiving dinner had triggered that cascade of dominoes. Brianna was discreetly encouraged to explore other opportunities. 3 weeks later, she accepted a position at a small, obscure firm out in Riverton, New York. Half the salary, double the commute, and absolutely no prestige whatsoever. The gleaming apartment in Maple Ridge was gone. The Audi A7 was returned to the dealership. Some of her designer suits, I was informed, began appearing on various resale applications. Meanwhile, my own life experienced a dramatic acceleration. The Bayshore Tower redevelopment contract proceeded as planned, a lucrative $68 million agreement spanning 5 years. Whitman's enthusiastic recommendation opened doors at 3 additional new commercial complexes. Redwood Commerce Center extended their agreement with us. We began aggressively hiring more technicians. Our crew swelled to 300 employees. "You gave that ungrateful girl $360,000, my foreman, Eddie Kramer, declared when he finally heard the complete story. He had been with me since the very beginning, the first technician I had ever hired. And she was embarrassed of you? Boss, you're worth 10 of her. My office manager, Lydia Monroe, was considerably less gentle in her assessment. I truly hope she enjoys the subway, she remarked dryly, though she probably believes she's too good for public transit, too. Support surprisingly flowed in from unexpected corners. 3 of Brianna's former classmates from Ridgeview reached out to me, now junior partners at respectable mid-sized firms of their own. Anyone who can meticulously build what you've constructed while simultaneously supporting an ungrateful sibling like that, one of them wrote, that's precisely the kind of character we seek in a vendor. As for our extended family, the fallout was swift and decisive. Word traveled through our relatives faster than any official announcement could. Suddenly, everyone knew that Brianna's prestigious law degree had Anderson Mechanical Systems invisibly etched across the bottom, and that she had never once expressed gratitude for it. Our mother, who had retired to Arizona a couple of years earlier, called me. Is it true? She asked, her voice hushed. Everything Miriam is saying about Brianna about you? Yes, Mom, I confirmed. All of it. And you truly paid for her entire education? I made a solemn promise to Dad, I stated simply. She remained quiet for a long time, processing. I'm coming up, she finally announced. Brianna needs to hear some things from me, things I apparently failed to teach her when she was younger. Later, I heard that particular conversation became legendary among our family. 2 full hours of our mother, gentle usually, but still possessing an unwavering spine when it truly counted, lecturing Brianna about humility, respect, and the profound importance of gratitude. She concluded by stating she was ashamed, not of what I did for a living, but of how Brianna had so disgracefully treated me. Our cousins, the very ones Brianna used to quietly judge for their ordinary, less glamorous jobs, offered no sympathy whatsoever. Our cousin Jacob Willis, who successfully operates a plumbing business in Brighton Hills, Massachusetts, much like our dad once did, posted on a neighborhood social platform. Money does not inherently create class. Brianna Anderson is irrefutable proof that you can possess a law degree and still possess none. The post was widely shared and liked hundreds of times by both family and friends. Brianna, of course, attempted damage control. She posted her own sanitized, self-serving version of events online, portraying me as jealous and vindictive, claiming I had ambushed her in front of her superiors. Miriam quietly countered by posting irrefutable screenshots of the trust transfers, every payment, every date, every exact dollar amount. The narrative shifted quickly and decisively. At Anderson Mechanical Systems, my loyal crew stood behind me like an impenetrable wall. Anyone who dares to look down on the people who keep their buildings livable can freeze for all I care, Eddie declared. Or sweat, Lydia added dryly, depending on which system fails first. By 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, it truly felt as though I was inhabiting an entirely different life. We had successfully landed major contracts with several prominent hospitals. An insightful article about the blue-collar CEO who meticulously built an empire was featured in a respected business magazine. I even conducted an interview at the quaint Bean and Barrel Cafe, my favorite little spot, leisurely sipping coffee while discussing work, family, and the undeniable pride of having grease under your fingernails. I heard that Brianna was still relentlessly grinding it out at the small firm in Riverton. Her meager salary barely covered her regular living expenses and her now crushing loan payments, devoid of my assistance. She had relocated to a cramped studio apartment in a building that, ironically, utilized one of my direct competitors for its climate services. Sometimes, I wondered if she thought of me when the antiquated heating unit rattled noisily to life in the dead of the night. Then, one morning in May, an email from her materialized in my inbox. Fiona, I have spent the last 6 months in intensive therapy, desperately trying to comprehend how I transformed into the person I was that night, and all the small, insidious choices that led up to it. I was so consumed by the desperate need not to be perceived as less than that I became, in essence, less than human. I was utterly cruel. I recognize that you have undoubtedly heard apologies before, but this one is not about attempting to avoid the consequences. I am still actively paying for them. I am currently working 2 demanding jobs just to stay financially afloat. Honestly, it is probably precisely what I deserve. I simply needed you to know that I finally, truly see it. I took your love, your hard-earned money, your immense sacrifice for 7 years, and in return, I offered you nothing but profound shame. Dad would be utterly disgusted with me. I am disgusted with myself. I am not requesting the trust back. I am not asking you to rectify this situation. I simply want you to be aware that I now fully comprehend what I so foolishly threw away. You were not just my sister. You were, in fact, my hero. And I was simply too blind and too proud to recognize it. Brianna. I reread her email 3 times. Then I composed my reply. Brianna, I am genuinely glad you are attending therapy. I am glad you are finally engaging in introspection instead of merely focusing on outward appearances. I accept your apology. However, forgiveness and access are not synonymous. If you are truly earnest about changing, prove it to yourself, not to me. Work your jobs. Diligently pay your loans. Learn what it genuinely feels like to construct something from the ground up without someone quietly mitigating every single misstep behind you. Perhaps one day, when you truly comprehend the inherent value of where you originated from instead of frantically running from it, we can indeed sit down for coffee. But that day is not today. Fiona. I genuinely meant every single word. Forgiveness might eventually materialize, but respect, that had to be painstakingly earned from scratch. That Thanksgiving irrevocably remade me. I learned that establishing firm boundaries with family members is not an act of cruelty. It is, in fact, an act of survival. That loving someone does not equate to sponsoring their disrespectful behavior. That a solemn promise to care for another does not translate into allowing them to perpetually use you as a doormat. The promise I had made to my father always possessed an invisible, unspoken expiration date, the precise moment his other daughter chose to forget her roots. Today, Anderson Mechanical Systems proudly employs approximately 350 individuals. Many of them originate from backgrounds similar to mine, people who were consistently told their work was not a measure of real success. I ensure every single one of them understands the undeniable truth. There is profound dignity in honest labor. There is honor in expertly fixing what is broken and diligently ensuring people remain safe and comfortable. As for Brianna, the last I heard, she is still in Riverton, still working, still paying her dues, still learning what it genuinely means to earn your way. Perhaps she will ultimately succeed, perhaps she won't. Either way, it is no longer my responsibility. The most crucial lesson derived from all of this is simple: never be ashamed of honest work. Never permit anyone to reduce your inherent worth to a mere job title. And never, ever forget your roots. Forgetting your origins does not render you sophisticated, it renders you hollow. And hollow individuals, inevitably, eventually collapse under the crushing weight of their own emptiness. Just ask my sister. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If this narrative resonated with you in any way, it would truly mean a lot if you liked the video, subscribed, and perhaps shared your own similar experience in the comments section. Have you ever been compelled to cut ties with someone who utterly failed to value your profound sacrifices? I am listening. And always remember, your true value